spoilerios about spoilerios. Let's roll.
Hello, I'm Sean Baker. Welcome to another edition of Evolution of the Arm. Okay, so my friends, I'm going to try to take a more relaxed and casual approach to talking about episode 8. I didn't get a chance to rewatch the episode. I watched it last night. I've been thinking about it ever since. Obviously, I'm pretty sure everybody that's going to click on this video has probably been thinking about it. I think it's the most polarizing episode so far, obviously. I think there's going to be people that are just so disappointed that it was such a... left turn's not even the word, right? So, okay, let's just go right into it. The episode begins right where the other one left off, with Ray and Bad Coop driving away from the prison in the car that the warden gave him. Ray pretty much says that he's going to charge Cooper for this information that he got. I was so shocked when Ray actually had the upper hand and killed Bad Coop in front of us. I thought, oh my God, this is genius. You know, the whole time I've been thinking, so is the reason why good Coop, our Coop, is trapped in this diminished Dougie capacity is because he has to defeat the doppelganger somehow, like Hawk alludes to back in the second season of the show, where you have to face your shadow self and have I forget how he says it, but like unwavering courage. Or is it just the two can't exist in the same plane, and the other one's been there long enough where he's built up this head of steam where he's going to remain the solid one and the other one's going to be diminished? So I'm thinking the geographical distance between them, I don't see this confrontation happening, right? So how's it going to... So Ray shoots him and I'm like, oh my God, brilliant, right? So now he's going to die, and the next scene is going to be good Coop waking up and like, oh my God. And then we get this... One of the eeriest things I've ever seen is this sequence with the woodsman, like kind of superimposed and doing whatever they were doing to Bad Coop. It was just, you look at Ray's face and he's terrified. And then we get 9 Inch Nails, basically a music video. Now, I'm a Nin fan. I didn't expect this at all. It seems so weird and out of place in the kind of the first quarter of this episode. I will say, remember, Lynch shot this as basically an 18-hour movie that's going to have to be divided to air in 1-hour segments. So I think if at some point in time, Alamo Drafthouse or the Egyptian or somebody please runs a marathon 18 hours of this, I think maybe it'll make more sense in that context. I think that's how Lynch is editing it. So we go right from that then to 1945 New Mexico. And I thought for sure, oh my God, so this is going to be... young Dougie Milford in Mark Frost's Secret History of Twin Peaks. We get in a lot of his history, and he was present in a lot of the New Mexico, like the Area 51 and stuff like that in that time period. So I thought for sure that's what it was. And then we get, my friends, this is cinema. This is the cinema we don't see anymore, even in the movies. This is the cinema that Bret Easton Ellis just extols his disappointment with on his podcast week after week about how it doesn't exist anymore. It exists, and we saw it last night. It was gorgeous. It begins with that slow-mo of the nuclear, the atom bomb. And of course, what does Gordon Cole have as the backdrop behind his desk in his office? It's the same thing. Now, how that connects exactly, I'm not sure, other than it's been suggested now that is what Blue Rose refers to as the aftermath of that. We go from the mushroom cloud, and this beautiful, the smoke rolling and everything, into just this miasma of, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It's using cinema to express abstract ideas, and it was gorgeous and just so counterintuitive to what anybody thought they were going to get. And really at this point, as I'm thinking about this, the show now seems to me, Lynch has expressed his disappointment in film. Movies that people want to make and the movies that people want to watch aren't what he wants to do with movies. So he's, at one point he said he was done with movies. I think he's since recanted, but at any rate. So this is, Showtime's giving him money. This is his platform. So I think it's a really good thing that we waited 27 years for this, because, if it had just been like a season 3 that was pretty much a continuation of season 2, of course it would have made me happy in some way, but the possibilities that he's exploring are monumental. And it got me thinking, with this Peaks being his new platform, I mean, really the episode felt like surfing around a new version of davidlynch.com, where he used to post shorts and kind of experimental ideas and whatnot. The convenience store. Now, obviously, this convenience store where we see all these woodsmen coming in and coming out in this kind of sped up motion, the convenience store seems to be there when they arrive. So what was the convenience store before? Who ran it? Who owned it? Because they seem to just take over. Is this the convenience store that the one-armed man says that, we lived above a convenience store? We get the scene in Fire Walk With Me with what I've always thought of as the convenience store meeting. It's the Black Lodge, I think. Whereas I think the Red Room is the waiting room. The way that the chevron is black and white is kind of always implied to me. And they say the waiting room. And there's entities from both sides. I think it's an in-between place. I'll get back to that in a minute. So the woodsmen are in Fire Walk With Me in this convenience store meeting scene where we see the jumping man and the electrician, two characters we've yet to see any more exploration on, and obviously Bob and the little man from another place and the Chalfonts. And one thing I had not realized before, actually there's another woodsman in Fire Walk With Me. If you go back and watch the scene with Chris Isaac and Kiefer Sutherland where they finish at the morgue with Teresa Banks' body, they go to get food at Hap's Diner. The scene begins with them talking to a guy named Jack, and there's the guy playing with an electrician, maybe, playing with the lights in the back. There's another guy in that scene. It's almost really hard to see. I mean, there's a guy there, but you don't notice. It looks like the second woodsman. So the woodsman sitting on the couch in the convenience store meeting scene. Not Jürgen Prochnow, who's a little bit more prominent, the one that there's always been a popular fan theory that it's Margaret Lanterman, the log lady's husband. The other woodsman, credited as Woodsman 2 in the credits for Fire Walk With Me, they're dressed almost exactly the same. There are differences. I think the beard on one is dark and the beard on the one in Hap's Diner is gray. I don't know. There's so many questions now about the woodsmen. Are they inhabiting archetypes? Do they take people over the same way the other spirits do? Another thing we get here among the woodsmen then is this scene with this kind of homunculus looking thing that's vomiting out just stuff, and one of the things is Bob, right? We see Bob in kind of like an egg or a globe. Is this homunculus thing the thing from the box, the glass box in New York? They look similar. Now that could just be because they're kind of featureless. There's a video that Welcome to Twin Peaks posted a couple weeks ago, and it takes the footage of Sam and Tracy when she comes in and the guard's not there. He lets her in, so he's out of the room for a minute letting Tracy in. And then we see later that Cooper actually comes into the box during that time. If you find this video, it shows you that they line up perfectly, right? So, and what it shows you is that when the eyeless woman in what I now think is a decayed White Lodge says, "My mother's coming, we have to hurry," that's about the time that this thing appears in the box after Cooper and then gets out and mutilates Sam and Tracy. Is this the same thing, and did it birth Bob somehow? We'll go to this idea of a decayed White Lodge. Also in episode 8, we go to this vast purple and black ocean, which we've seen in episode 3, I think it was. Cooper falls through infinite space. We see this ocean, and then he lands on this thing that now we see in episode 8 is this place where inside is the giant and a character named Senorita Dido. Okay. Cooper goes in. It doesn't look anything like it looks in episode 8. In episode 8, it looks like the 40s. There's lavish upholstery, and it's the giant and Senorita Dido, or what my friend Brown lovingly called the giant's wife, which I loved. We also see that same place. We see Cooper and the giant in it. And the first thing we see in the new series is the black and white sequence where the giant says, Richard and Linda, 2 birds, 1 stone. The gramophone plays those weird sounds. Cooper's there, the giant's there. Senorita Dido, or the giant's wife, is not there. Now, I did a little looking on the significance of the name Dido. To perform mischievous tricks or deeds. So there is also... Dido was the legendary queen of Carthage in Virgil's Aeneid. She kills herself when Aeneas leaves her. I don't know about the connection with the Aeneid. Possibly. But I'd like to focus on performs mischievous tricks or deeds. Because could maybe So the giant in episode 8, we see him kind of tune into what's going on with this, the birth of Bob, and then he begins to levitate, and it looks like he's trying to counteract it somehow. And so this like gold filament or whatever comes out of him, and then this births this thing that is then Laura, or like the essence of Laura, and then they send it to Earth through what looks like a weird Dolly-esque saxophone, right? Could it be that Senorita Dido, named after mischievous tricks or deeds, actually somehow pulled a fast one on the giant, and that's why she's no longer there when we go back to the giant and Cooper, which is probably later? I'm working under this theory as of right now. Please leave comments. You guys have been great in the comments. So much great conversations going on these videos, and I love it. It's why I do it, right? I don't think I'm an authority. I want to talk about it. I want you to talk with me. At first I thought, oh, the bomb is where it blew a hole between worlds. I think a lot of people thought this, and that's where the Lodge entities come in. But I don't think that's right, because in Mark Frost's Secret History of Twin Peaks, obviously, like, the Lodge is present in some capacity, both lodges, and through what Hawk says about his heritage in the show, in the original series, it's been there for a long time, back at least, Lewis and Stevenson, obviously even before, if the native population they encountered knew about it. Okay, so how's this for a theory? The lodges existed, time immemorial, whatever, but there was a balance, as there was in the world. The detonation of this atomic bomb shifted that, so that it birthed Bob, because it was now at this point where you could have human suffering and pain on a scale never before imagined. Now, maybe that's naive. Maybe you could go back to the Crusades. I don't want to debate history on this. It's not, in the purview of the podcast. But let's just say, for the sake of argument right now, that is the penultimate. I mean, that's where human suffering and misery just really rocketed exponentially. This births Bob. Bob's goal is to feed off of this. So he spreads it. He goes around and he tries to generate it. And we see this in everything he's done, from Leland to, Bad Coop, everything. So what if the red room, the waiting room, is the mediating point? So in other words, now we're seeing the giant in the White Lodge. This is the bastion of good, right? The opposite of the Black Lodge. He's trying to counteract, as he's watching what's happening with the bomb, he's trying anything he can to counteract that, because he sees the shift going towards the negative, towards the Black Lodge. And this has never happened before. Now there's a struggle. In the series, we get the giant appearing to Cooper at one point, and he says, "There are things that I cannot tell you." Meaning there's some kind of a protocol. There's something policing this. There's rules. So imagine if the entities of the Red Room that draw in at some point those from both lodges are kind of mediating this, because there's been this shift and they can't let it get out of control, because you go to one extreme, everything dies. That's just my theory for right now. We've got two lodges. The balance shifts towards the black. The Red Room is the mediating point. And then the White Lodge decays, so that what we see with the giant and Senorita Dido when the bomb explodes, we see later when Cooper's there, it's not the same anymore. There's an eyeless woman. The speech is fractured. It's between forward and backwards. It doesn't look the same. She's worried about her mother. It seems like the White Lodge is in trouble. The balance has shifted. This also ties into a lot of stuff. I won't get into this either, but I've always been a big reader of things that are Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, and when Frost tied that in, I was fascinated in the Secret History. And there's something about Crowley performing the John Dee's rites, the calls of the Enochian angels, and there's an essay online by, I think it's Donald Tyson, that posits that when Crowley actually, because John Dee and Edward Kelly didn't get to complete them, Crowley did more of them but left one undone, he and Victor Newberg, in the 40s, I forget when, in the desert. And so this Donald Tyson essay posits that perhaps they kicked this door open and let in this thing that has now, like, the world since World War II has become an increasingly dark and devastating place, more so maybe than before. Again, I don't want to argue history. Things were terrible in, the Middle Ages, but let's just say the power to do bad now is so exponentially worse. So from there, the last thing I want to talk about is the Frog Roach, which we'll call it. And Mr. Brown also referred to it as that in the text, and I love that, so I'm going to go with it. The frog roach. It hatches from an egg in the desert, crawls into this home, and crawls into the mouth of this young girl. Now, my initial interpretation was that this was Bob, because we see Bob in this kind of egg thing. He comes down. We also see Laura in like a globe or an egg thing come down. So I was thinking, this is Bob. It hatches, it takes its first, and it's a combination of two disparate organisms put together. That kind of seems like Bob or like the Lodge, like that's what they do. Crawls into this girl's mouth. First host. Okay. The Parasite. I always try to not read too much online before I do these, but I how could I help it after last night, right? So I read a little bit. There was a Birth Movies Death article that I really liked, and I forget the author's name, but she talked about the fact that she thought it was the idea that it wasn't Bob, but it was Laura that hatched and crawled into a young Sarah Palmer's mouth. I don't really love the idea of Laura being anything more than Laura, the high school girl that has this terrible thing happen to her and encounters these spirits. But if she's some kind of pure archetype, okay, obviously I'll deal with it. I got smitten with this Sarah Palmer thing for a while. I don't think that's it, because the woodsmen do seem to be somehow involved in this Frog Roach's course. I think it's Bob. I think it's the first incarnation of Bob as that girl. I don't think we know who that girl is. Or maybe we do, I don't know. Hopefully we'll see more. That's it. I got nothing else. I'm sure there were things I didn't talk about. Please hit me up in the comments. It was maybe my favorite episode so far, and I just loved it. So I just can't wait till the next episode, as I'm sure you can. So, okay, until then, I'll see you in the trees.